Hello, Internet. I am Space Panther. This is Marlowe Fluff. Meow. Alright, so, in my last video about the Women's March, towards the end of the video, the point I was really getting into was that we don't need the government, that victimhood is a state of mind. We believe that the government's here to help us, and because of that, we become dependent on them. But that's no way to live, and if we ever want to be true sovereign beings, which is our birthright, we need to look beyond that. We need to remove ourselves from the government, from the system of statism, of corruption and control. And I think a lot of people, the question is, well, how do I do that? When people are first presented with the ideas of anarchy, most people react either very defensively, because it's challenging the program. The program of statism, it's something it's been part of our lives from the time we're little. TV programs, they present this message. The schooling does. I majored in political science in college, and despite the fact that I read dozens of different political philosophers, I really wasn't exposed to the idea of anarchy. So when presented with this idea, people either repel, they get kind of upset, or they think it's really cool, but they don't understand how to make it happen in practice. It's like, yeah, that sounds great. People existing as sovereign free beings without this structure of control, but how do we do that? It's like this ideal anarchist utopian society exists way over here, and here we are in the U.S. or in whatever country you're in. Some countries definitely are more free than others. There's also an illusion of freedom in a lot of countries like the U.S. But anyway, throughout my daily life, I'm constantly kind of shocked at how easy it is to implement anarchist principles within the structure of statism. So there's so many things, dozens, probably hundreds of things that you can do every single day that will help to bring about this anarchist world that we deserve. That is anarchy is the natural state of humanity. I'd encourage you to watch the documentary Engines of Domination. You can find it for free on YouTube. It's just an hour long. It really explores how we existed in a state of anarchy for thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. And this idea of government and statism is really pretty recent in human society. So we want to go back to this ideal where we don't have this structure of control over us, but how do we do it? I think that's the big question for a lot of people. How do I be an anarchist while living within the state? And I have the solution for you. Actually, it's many solutions. And so I'm making a sub-series called Everyday Anarchy. This is episode number 1, about how things you can do every day to bring about anarchist principles into your lives. So right now I'm going to focus on regulations. That's probably one of the most oppressive things about the state, and how you can fight regulation or overcome regulation with more regulation. And this is kind of the brilliance of it, is rather than like, oh, look at these regulations holding me back, I just won't do it. You can still do whatever you want to do by finding other regulations that contradict the first regulation. So there are hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of regulations at the federal, state, county, local, city level. Because there's so many regulations, whatever regulation is holding you back from doing what you want to do, you can find another regulation that can superimpose it or contradicts it, or you can find loopholes, in regulations. And this is the whole point of lawyers, an entire industry, because there's so many regulations. That's not the only thing lawyers do, but because there are so many regulations, lawyers have come about, these people that you pay a lot of money to just so they can find other regulations that can overcome the regulation that's, bringing you down. So I'll give you a few examples of this. Once you see it everywhere, but it takes a little while to internalize it. So, for example, as Mango said in his last video, we are moving to Placer County, just east of Sacramento, and we need to find somewhere to live. I spent all yesterday calling apartments. I probably called 20 different apartment complexes. So we have 2 cats and a dog. Our animals are all small. Our dog is 16. He weighs like 15 pounds. Cats are easy. Every single apartment complex, we're like, no, only 2 animal limit. Well, and then one of the ladies told me it was Placer County. So Placer County has implemented this law that apartment dwellers are only allowed 2 animals per apartment. And sure, I mean, like many laws, this was probably, altruistic and positive in nature. Oh, let's stop, illegal breeding. Let's stop hoarding. Let's help the homeless animal population. In reality, what it does is actually increase the homeless animal population because if people have 3 animals and you have to move somewhere, and it's the whole county. It's not just the city. It's all of the cities in this county. You're not allowed to have more than 2 animals. So what do? You just set one of your animals loose on the street. You give it to an animal shelter, which will probably be euthanized. 35 million dogs are euthanized in shelters every year. Some find more homes, but so actually, laws like this actually, like most laws, make the situation worse. But luckily for our animals, we love them too much to let some silly regulations get in the way. So after a bit of searching, I realized that an animal, a pet, is not considered a pet if it's a service animal. So you're allowed to have 2 pets, but a service animal does not count as a pet. And thankfully, the definition of a service animal is pretty broad. The ADA, a federal regulation, the Americans with Disabilities Act, prohibits landlords from denying service animals into their residents. So even apartments that allow no pets have to allow service animals. It's a federal law. They'll get into trouble with the federal government if they don't allow service animals. So Jackson, our black cat, we're going to make him into a service animal. It's pretty easy to do, thankfully. You can just do it online. And again, the definition is pretty broad, so he's going to be an emotional support animal because he does provide me with a lot of emotional support. And if I had to get rid of him, it would break my heart. I would have a really hard time adjusting to our new environment if I had to get rid of one of my cats. So he does provide me a lot of emotional support. We're going to get him registered as an emotional support animal, and we'll be able to bypass the 2 animal limit by having a service animal. So that's an example of how you can use regulations against other regulations. Another example, I was reading yesterday in LA Weekly. So, Trump wants to deport any undocumented workers, illegal immigrants that have a criminal record. And there's a lot of cities that have an issue with this, and they're calling themselves sanctuary cities. And they're saying they're not going to comply with Trump's regulations. Seattle, it's mostly the West Coast. There's a lot of immigration there, but also those tend to be more liberal cities, which tend to, value immigration more. So you have Seattle, Oregon, San Francisco, LA. They're all referring to themselves as sanctuary cities, saying we're not going to comply, and they have an issue with the order. And I have an issue with it too. I don't think we should be deporting people. The more the merrier. Let's dissolve borders and be one people. But that's not the point of this video. The point is that LA has an issue with Trump's ban. So Trump has this okay, I want, he's like, we're going to get a list of every illegal immigrant that's created a crime, and then they're going to be deported. And in response to this, what LA is doing is they are legalizing activities which may in the past have been criminal. And specifically in this case is street vendors. So street vendors, people selling goods and services and foods and products on the street, is illegal in LA. It's illegal in most U.S. cities. For stupid reasons. I'll tell you from being in Asia, where there's street vendors everywhere, street vendors do nothing but improve the quality of your life. In Korea, when I was in Korea, there's street vendors everywhere. If you're going to work or to school and you need a snack, there's somebody on the corner selling dokboki or these little waffle fish or all different. They're all Korean foods. You probably wouldn't know unless you knew a lot about Korea, but they're everywhere. And so you never just needing snacks. What an easy thing. I'm hungry, I need a snack. Here's someone selling a snack. I'm going to buy it. But unfortunately in the U.S. and in LA, that's banned. People aren't allowed to sell you food unless they're in a brick and mortar restaurant or unless they're a food truck, which can take upwards of $60,000 to $100,000 to get registered as a legally registered food truck. Same in Thailand. It's just, I don't know, it's so great having just street food. It's way cheaper because they don't have the overhead. It's available all the time. It's like when you come out of the bars in Korea at 3 or 4 or 5 a.m. And yes, they stay open that long because they don't have the stupid, regulations like in California closing the bars at 2 a.m. Nobody wants that. What? They say it's gonna stop drunk driving. Closing bars at 2 a.m. actually encourages drunk driving because, oh, it's 2 a.m., what am I going to do? Versus if you didn't have those laws, they could wait till they got sober and drive home. But I digress. Anyway, so LA is legalizing street vendors. So, the Mexican immigrant, and they're mostly from Mexico because LA is so close to Mexico, just 2 hours, comes to the U.S., doesn't have papers, can't really get a job, but they can work, they can sell, they have a cooler with wheels, they can sell ice cream on the street. And this has been illegal up until this point, but now it's being allowed. And in the past, they would have got misdemeanor fines. So anybody in LA County who was selling things on the street, any street vendor, whether it's actual goods like sunglasses or headbands, or if it's food, they're illegal. They would have gotten written up. It's a misdemeanor charge. If they didn't go away, they would have gotten arrested and put in jail. All of those people now would be up for deportation because they have a criminal record, even though all they're doing is trying to support themselves and their families by like, oh, hey, look, I have this cooler with wheels. I'm going to buy some ice cream and then resell it, for 50% more and actually like work and make money for my family. But then if somebody, if the police see you, you suddenly have a criminal record. And now based off of Trump's things he's doing, now you're going to get deported. And so LA is a sanctuary city, does not want deportations. So in response to this, they are legalizing all street vendors. And it's so incredible because this idea of fighting regulation. Oh, this is Jackson. This is my little service animal. I know, look how cute he is. Making a cameo in the video. So anyway, you even see it with cities, within the government, this fighting regulation with more regulation. The counties, the cities are fighting the federal regulations with their own regulations. And so it's really great. And this can be applied to anything. And this is one of the easiest ways to overcome government regulations. When you feel like you're restricted, and this can apply, I've given 2 examples, but there's so many examples. Anytime there's a regulation impeding what you're trying to do, I almost 100% of the time, I don't want to say 100%, but almost 100% of the time, there will be another regulation you can use to overcome that original regulation. And again, that's the whole point. That's what lawyers do. That's what we pay somebody else thousands of dollars to do this when we're in trouble with the law, but we can do it every day in our lives, and especially with the internet. You just have to kind of Google around, and you'll see ways this can be done. So I think this is really great. I hope that this inspires some people in their own lives when you feel trapped, like with all of these regulations, you're not able to do what you want to do, that you can still do it, that it's possible, and that you just need to be a little creative and figure out other laws that you can use to find loopholes or superimpose on that. And this is really how the revolution is going to occur. It's not going to occur through burning buildings down and through any violent protests. The revolution occurs up here. It's in our minds. In our minds, we are captive. We believe we need this system, and we abide by it. And because it exists within our minds, it can also unexist within our minds. So as soon as we start to kind of internalize the idea that we are sovereign beings and we don't depend upon a government to give us rights, that there are rights, that's when the revolution starts. And if these things, I'm going to make this video series, Everyday Anarchy, if all 300, 400 million Americans started to implement these things every single day, we really would see big changes. And it's incredible. And Trump is the most anarchist president we've ever had. This is why Mango and I think he's the best president we've ever had. We both had given up the idea of voting because it's, you're just justifying a corrupt system. But the thing is Trump is not part of the system. That's the beauty of it. He is not a Republican. He's not a Democrat, definitely. But he is a break from the third-party system. And if you look, every single one of Trump's regulations, or every single one of Trump's executive orders he's passed, is reducing government, reducing regulation, reducing taxes. Every single thing he's doing is bringing it smaller and smaller and smaller. And this is why Trump is an anarchist. It's like you can't just expect oh yeah, we're just going to dissolve all of government. It doesn't, no one would know how to function if that happened. It has to happen slowly. And it's just, I thought it was going to be a bottom-up approach, and it is bottom-up. But now that Trump's in office, it's also top-down. And what I'm hoping is that we can meet somewhere in the middle. We, the people, implement these things that I'm telling you about and will be telling you about into our lives. Meanwhile, Trump is implementing less regulation, less taxes on every level, and we're going to meet somewhere in the middle where we're going to have a society where it does reflect the needs of the people instead of the needs of this 1%, or this cabal, this satanic cabal. So anyway, I hope this was inspiring. I'm going to make a series of videos because there's so many things that you can be doing in your day to bring about a more free, sovereign world. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. And I hope everyone has a beautiful, wonderful, peaceful day. And if you're in LA, I hope you're enjoying the rain. I definitely am enjoying it. All right, peace.